Good day, my wonderful people. You're welcome back to the channel. This is Yuglo Fashion, and thank you so much for stopping by. Today I'll be showing you how to make this long flay dress with ruffle hem, and also it has side pockets and box pleats. So please stay tuned to the end and enjoy the tutorial. It's well detailed and it's beginner friendly. Thank you so much and stay blessed. This is the Kampala fabric I'll be using for the tutorial, and also add net, my black lining. This body I did not eventually use it, so I used this paper stay. First of all, I'll be cutting the upper bodice, and I'll be using lining to cut that first. So I folded the lining into two. So I'll be chalking out the edge. This is where I'm starting. This is the starting point, so I measured the nipple point, the under bust, the half length, and seam allowance of ½ inch to connect to the flay. Then I labeled them accordingly. This is nipple point, under bust, the half length, and the allowance. The next thing now is to measure the circumference of the shoulder. That's 7.5. That is 15 divided by 2. The circumference of the nipple point divided by 4. Circumference of the under bust divided by 4 as well. Circumference of the half length also divided by 4. So the circumference of the half length is 31 inches divided by 4. Then I added seam allowance of 2 inches. I connected everything together. From the shoulder, I came down with 7 inches. This is just the chest line. And this is where I'll be marking my armhole. So whatever I have for the circumference of the bust, I'll measure it at the chest line here, then add 1 inch extra for the armhole slope. And also I did that to the allowance. Then from the shoulder again, I measured 4.5 inches. At this angle here, I measured 1 inch. Here I measured half. So I'll be connecting everything together. I went ahead to cut it out. Then for the back bodies, I added zipper allowance of 2 inches. To the neckline, for the neckline, I measured 3 inches for the width. Then the length, I measured 5 inches. So I'll be cutting both front and back together at first. This is because the back is low, it's a bit low. Then for the shoulder, I measured 1 inch, then slant it back to the neckline. here I'll be measuring 1 inch instead of the 2 inches I added before. That's because I want the zipper to lay very well. I don't want any bulge there. And as you know, our back is not straight. We have this deep side at the back. From there, I measured the nipple to nipple circumference. And I measured 6 inches as well for the length of the dart. So on both sides of the nipple to nipple span, I measured half. This is for the darts. I connected them on a triangular form. So back to the front bodies. For the shape, this is how the shape of the neckline is. So I added another 1 inch allowance to the neckline just to bring out the shape. Then for the nipple to nipple, for the dart, I also measured the nipple to nipple span. And I reeled it to the nipple point. On both sides, I marked half inch, then connected it back to the nipple point in a triangular shape. After the upper bodies, the next thing is to cut the flay part. So for the flay, I folded it in a bias form. I picked the edge, then just measure it in a triangular way. So the length of the gown is 52. For the ruffle hem, I used 6 inches. So 58. The length of the gown is 58. 58 minus 6, which is the ruffle hem, I have 52. Then the half length is 16 inches. So 52 minus 16 inches, that's what I'll be working with here. But in order not to stress my brain trying to subtract, I'll just place my tape here on 16, then try to measure out the 52 inches. But instead of using the 52 inches, I'll add 1 inch extra. The 1 inch is to stitch the allowance I need to stitch to the upper bodies, then the ruffle hem as well. So here I place the tape back to the peak side, then move round to form a circle there. So the circumference of the half length is 31 inches divided by 4. So whatever I have here, I'll add 12 inches to it. That's because there's box splits. That's why I use the 12 inches. So you can make yours more than that if you want the box split to be bigger than mine. Then I place the tape back to the peak side like I did earlier, then chalked it down the hem round. So here I added allowance to the front. I added 1 inch allowance to the front. This is the zipper side of the back. So the next thing now is to cut the hem, the ruffle hem. But to cut the ruffle hem, I will need to measure the hem of the flay. So measuring the hem of the flay, the front is 78 inches and the 78 inches 78.5, and the Back also is 78.5. You know, with the 1 inches, the 1 inch I added for zipper, I will still be stitching that together, so I don't need that. I don't need to add that to the measurement. So now, adding the two together, I have 157 points. I have 157. Then I'll be multiplying the 157 by 2. This is for the ruffle. I just manage the fabric, so if you want your ruffle to be more than that, you can multiply it by 3. Then the length for the ruffle hem is 6 inches, like I measured earlier, but I added 1 inch for the 1.5 inch, 1 inch for the folding, then ½ inch to connect it to the flay. After cutting the ruffle hem, I went ahead to cut the sleeve, and if you look closely, the sleeve has pleats as well. So for the pleated part of the sleeve, I just multiplied the circumference of the armhole by 3. This will make it easier. Instead of eyeballing it, I multiplied it by 3. And I chalk it around this way. So the length I used here also is 6 inches. I chalked it around. And remember, the 6 inches has allowance of 1 inch as well. So which means the actual measurement is 5 inches. Now to the machine, I added my paper stitch to the fabric, then I stitch the darts. After stitching the darts, I went ahead to stitch the neckline. This is the front bodice. Then to the back, I also stitched the back bodies together, both lining and the fabric. So after that, I separated the lining. You know, I did not join the sides of the lining, it's only the neckline. So I separated the lining from the fabric. You can see that that's the lining. So this is the upper bodies, the upper bodies. I stitched the flay on it, then I pleated the box pleats. So that's for the front. The back also, I also stitched the flay to the back bodies. The next thing now is to stitch the back bodies together, and for this I came down after the half length. I came down with like 9 to 8 inches. I used 8 actually. I came down with 8 inches. Then, you know, I left 1 inch for the zipper allowance, so I'll just stitch the 1 inch. So I went ahead to stitch the 1 inch. Sorry, I noticed that the parts where I did the box pleats, they didn't really show well, but I have a tutorial on it. I'll drop it in the comment section or in the description box, so you can check it. Now after stitching, I also stitched the sides. After stitching the back bodies, I also stitched the sides together. So for the side, now I added 2 inches for the seam allowance. After stitching the seam allowance, I measured from the half length. I came down with 7 inches. This is for the pockets. After the 7 inches, I continued the stitch. I hope you understand what I'm trying to explain here. This is the 7 inches is just for the pocket, and this is by this at the side, not at the back. I'm stitching the side now. So after stitching the 2 sides, I turned the shoulder. So to turn the shoulder, you fix it this way. Place the back inside the front. You put the back shoulder in the front, then you stitch the 4 pieces together, plus the lining to the 4 pieces. Then the same thing I did to the fabric, I'll be replicating it on the lining as well. So I've stitched the lining as well together. But in this case, I stitched both the lining at the side, not after adding the flay. So I went ahead to stitch the flay to the lining as well, and also this is the add net. I'll be stitching the add net to the lining. So I left the zipper allowance, and I started my pleats for the add net. So after fixing the add net, I came down with 9 inches again, 8 inches rather, for the lining, the same way I did for the fabric. And also I repeated the same action here I repeated the same action. Then the next thing is to fix the zipper. So I went ahead to chalk the zipper allowance. At the upper ear I used 2, then at the half length I used 1. After fixing the zip, I went ahead to fold the lining on it. So you can see the outcome. And this is the inside. So now I'll stitch both the fabric and the lining together inside. Just stitch a bit. It's not necessary that you stitch everything. Now for the ruffle hem, I started the pleat, but the pleat is not really big because of the allowance I added. So that was why I said if you are doing yours, you can multiply it by 3 so that you will have enough ruffle. But because the fabric is not really much, that was why I used 2. That was why I multiplied it by 2. Having done with the hemline, I went ahead to stitch the sleeve to the armhole. So I notched the middle of the sleeve and pin it to the armhole side and also to the shoulder side, and I pleated everything. So thank you very much. The next thing now is to just pipe the armhole or weave it. Thank you very much for watching this video to the end. Stay blessed.